From a closet, also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio, this is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast.
This is a different version of the JMVO Weekly Primer, where this is the podcast where you want to marinate your mind in good stuff. And I hope I'm actually going to dispense some good stuff for everybody who's watching and listening for this. But this is a phenomenon that I've been seeing going on for probably the past 15, 20 years that I've been doing voiceover. And I truly believe that it started with the degradation of television and radio and traditional media. Because of the Wall Street companies and the consolidation of all the different broadcast mediums that started in 1996 with the Telecommunications Act, the talent and the brain drain that went on in the industry was quite apparent, and it took a lot of time for it to catch up with everything else. So there was a race to the bottom in salaries, different markets where you could make over $100,000 a year doing creative arts, radio imaging, radio production, voiceover, things of that nature started to go away. So I think that has permeated itself throughout the rest of the industry. And now we get to the point where a lot of the people who were in radio or traditional media made great livings after that talent brain drain, because they all got tired of, not getting paid well enough. They typically started their own businesses, went out on their own, and eventually, they got paid much better because they were their own people. Now, at that time, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the competitive marketplace for voiceover people, and I'm speaking on experience within the voiceover industry, but I think it's permeated a lot of the creative arts. And I believe it's a global problem. And it's not really a problem if you understand what it really is. But anyway, as technology made it more readily available to do the things that took a specialty at one point, meaning that the barrier to entry to get into some of these arts started coming down. By proxy, there's a lot more supply than there, and demand is still there, but with more supply comes lower rates. It's just a law of economics. So, with creatives, photographers, I'm telling a lot of people to get over themselves, because I'm seeing so much complaining about how things are and how the race to the bottom has happened in the marketplace. Completely understandable to be upset about it. Nobody likes their livelihoods being cut into, but you have to accept the reality that it's here. You have to. There's no choice in that. All right? And a lot of people want to link arms and put a lot of energy into linking arms and upholding rate integrity, which is fine. Hello, Mary DiNardo. Good talk with you yesterday. I completely understand that. I'm fine, Am I fine with it? Not really. I don't think it's a good use of your time. I honestly don't. Rate integrity conversation's been going on for about 15 years. People need to understand that it's a new paradigm out there. It's a new marketplace. I did some research, and I've seen numbers as high as 10 million, 1 million, 5 million, maybe 800,000 of people in the U.S. alone identify themselves as voice talent. That's just one category. Not voiceover talent, not VO artists, not voice actors. Voice talent, just one search term. That's a big number. And that's just in the U.S. What do you think it is worldwide? And we're living in a worldwide economy and marketplace. It's a new paradigm, okay? Complaining about how it is not going to help you get any business. Romanticizing the past is not going to help you get more business. And what I really find on these threads, especially when some people have the audacity to lambaste their potential customers that are coming into their email boxes and it's opportunities that are coming in for them, and they get on from agents to voiceover people, creatives, photogs, videographers, you know who you are, and you lambaste your customers online in a forum that's seemingly private that can be easily shared. You're complaining about an opportunity. And one of the things I always talk about is that every opportunity typically has about 4 to 6 equity points that people are missing out on. Creatives in general are emotional people. Voiceover people are very emotional people because they don't like their slice of the pie being made smaller, the amount of money that they can make much less than they typically have in the past 15, 20 years, which oddly enough, the ones who have been making all the money, when you actually start saying, well, if you worked on these three things, their comeback, oddly enough, is, I don't need your advice. I got it. I'm fine. I'm doing just fine. Then what are you complaining about? If you're doing just fine, what are you worried about? And I know I'm going to be lambasted. I've been called everything from a bottom feeder to I'm, part of the problem. All I'm doing is saying what is reality. Okay, the marketplace is the marketplace. It will decide whether or not you're good enough for the rate you're asking. And coming at them with, well, I don't crack my mic for any less than $350 a read is not a reason for someone to pay you that much. It isn't. And I hear so many pros talking about how, well, I don't do it for less than this, so go pound sand. I actually read a comment, an update from a Facebook page, a voiceover Facebook page, where they were talking about how they had an opportunity to make like $1,400 for a voiceover and give an hour of their time. But because they were only getting a year licensing out of it, a competitor for the company that they were doing a voiceover for may come out of the woodwork and want to hire them and really like them. They were doing it on the possibility of that happening. And from what I gathered, they turned down the work that was right in their hands for the possibility that, hey, their competitor may come around and offer me more. In this business, in the voiceover business, being that there's so many people onboarding, so many newbies onboarding, it's a reality. You have to accept that. All right. People are going to use Fiverr. People are going to use voices.com. As much as you hate them, it's a reality. And for you to come on, I've actually had somebody on a thread had the audacity to tell somebody else, well, you went ahead and formed this business without consulting us first. And to me, when someone tells me that, I've got three words for you, which are not very nice. But it's my business, and who are you to tell me what I can charge and not charge? That's the reality. It is a community, I get that. And I'm getting to the point where rate integrity really does kick in. There is a GVAA rate card that everybody should be sticking to for a multitude of reasons. But when you present it to your clients, just by saying, well, that's the rate card and that's what everybody typically gets, may not be a good enough reason for that client to be paying that rate. Now, before I mentioned the 4 to 6, I use usually about 5 equity points to every client. Every time you get an email that comes in, you ought to treat it like gold in terms of if it's a client looking to hire you for work. I understand that there are people that are going to lowball you. You just need to accept that and employ the ways to work the lowball offer without blowing them off and saying, well, that's it, I'm done with you, and just completely dismissing them. There are about 5 different equity points to address every time you have an opportunity. First, of course, is the potential opportunity, whatever they may be offering. All right, they may be showing you theirs in terms of their rate, on what they're willing to pay for what the job is. If you have an open mind and understand that lowball offers are going to come, how do you try and upsell them? That's one point of equity, and that comes with a sales process and some sort of a ability to sell in general and provide a decent value proposition. The second is understanding that they get a chance to see how it's like to work with you. That's an equity point because the person you're talking to typically doesn't want to stay where they are. Everybody wants to move up, right? And they understand that in your value proposition that you normally don't work for that kind of a rate. But in this case, you like the project, so you go ahead and do it anyway. They get a chance to see what it's like to work with you. Hopefully you've made an impression that the next place they land, they're going to be reaching out to you for potential work. All right, so you're creating that being a person of interest, that they remember you, you were cool to work with. They move up, then all of a sudden they understand your rate. They reach out to you when there's an opportunity, you get your rate down the road. There's also the aspect of who they know, because all these people typically have their own industries they're tied to, and a great point of equity is understanding their network and who they know that can refer you business. At the end of the project, you give them your best. They get to see what it's like to work with you. Maybe you got a few extra bucks in terms of the rate that you wanted, and then all of a sudden you get the option, the opportunity to say, okay, great. Was everything good? Did you like the product? Was I easy to work with? Did you enjoy it? Was it a value? They're either going to say, yes, no, or whatever. Okay, who else do you know? Another point of equity is the fact that they can go back and review you. If you're operating a business in the creative arts space, typically I would venture to assume that you have a Facebook page that has ratings capability on it. So, or Google or something of that nature. That's another equity point that they can go back and now give you a 5-star review. And I always coach people when it comes to reviews to ask for a 5-star. Be specific and ask for that 5-star review. They go about, and the way to go about it is say, listen, I only strive for 5-star reviews. If it's anything less, I consider that to be failing. If I can please ask you to give a 5-star review only on the basis that this has been a 5-star service. If it's been any less, let me know how I can fix that. And then go back in and make sure that you accommodate your customer. Typically, if you treat them right, they should be able to give you a 5-star review. That only helps you build your business. But with all the newbies that are onboarding into these different creative arts industries, I see photographers out there that literally have a phone and they're calling themselves a photographer. Whether you like it or not, it's a reality. And some of them are getting paid. It's about holding your value and knowing how to do it, which comes in the form of the value proposition. Not just coming at them and saying, well, that's just what I get. Or that's what the rate card says. Or I don't crack my mic. Or I don't open take the lens cap off my camera lens for anything less than X. That's not a reason for that client to pay you. You have to get creative. You have to show them what it's like to work with you and paint that picture. And that has to happen over, hopefully beyond an email where you can get on the phone with them. You're getting to have FaceTime or phone time with your client is your ability to lay out your value proposition, which in turn leads to what we call a trial close to see if your rate, let's say, for example, someone's coming at you and they want to pay you $150 for a voiceover. When I get that kind of option, all right, I'm either okay with it or I try and upsell them. I say, well, typically for what you're asking, I typically get anywhere from $250 to $350 or $400. But I like what you're doing here. I like your project. And this comes in the form of the value proposition. Getting them on the phone and actually talking to them, or even FaceTiming or getting in front of them would even be preferable. Maybe at a coffee shop or something. Being able to get in front of them or talk to them is very, very important, because then you can start reading them and getting the practice of reading your client. What if we could settle on $215 to $230, $240? Is that something we can get to for me to do this project, which I really want to be a part of? Is that something that would be fair to you? Is that something that would work for you? For newbies that are onboarding into the business, there's an element to realizing what you're worth. And a lot of the people, the old pros, tout this all the time. They talk about know your worth. But what is that number? And does your experience reflect that number? If you've only been doing voiceover or photography for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, what is that number? What can you possibly ask for? Well, it depends on how good you are and how good your stuff is and how good your demo is. If you're a person of interest, if you're out there and you're well known, that can help out. There's so many different factors in that. And it comes down to another thing, asking for it. What's the number that scares you when it comes to asking your number? And what's stopping you from asking for it? That's something you have to consider. And I'm kind of getting to the end of this because I'm rambling, and I always do this. But if you like what I had to say in this, please like, subscribe, rate, comment on the podcast. I typically don't do them in this fashion. I've always got somebody interviewing for a reason, because I kind of tend to ramble and I'm all over the place. But please like, subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast, and let me know if you have any questions. I know I've probably kicked the hive, and I'm going to be lambasted by a lot of the creative professional community, but I typically understand the fact that this is the reality in which we live. Complaining about it's going to do you no good. I don't think there's any sort of benefit to linking arms and rate integrity, because everybody at the end of the day is going to serve themselves and what's best for them. And if they can make some money doing what they do, that's going to happen. What I think the conversation needs to be about is the value proposition and selling processes, which you need to start learning. It's part of what you do for your business. Selling matters. Knowing how to sell matters. Having a sales process matters. From the meet and greet in terms of getting in front of them, getting them on the phone, how you intonate your voice when you get them on the phone, how you sound, to the delivery of the product, all matters. And even after delivery of the product, asking for referrals, they all matter. And understanding that every opportunity you have, because of the vastness of the marketplace in which we live and work, is massive. You have to treat every opportunity like gold. I read somewhere just now that the typical voiceover talent may make $10,000 a year if they're lucky. It's not true if you know how to sell, if you know what you're doing. Thank you for watching. Again, please watch, subscribe, rate, comment the JMVO Weekly Primer, and let me know if you have any questions, complaints, which I'm sure I'll get, or comments. And thanks for watching.